What happens when a daytime talk show suddenly turns into an emotional and intense argument, and a guest is forced to defend the most painful parts of his life? Imagine sitting under bright studio lights while someone questions whether your whole life journey, from the streets to becoming a musician, is just a clever publicity stunt. That's exactly what happened during one moment on daytime television. What you're about to hear is the story of a confrontation so intense that the entire studio fell silent. Because when Jelly Roll, the musician from Antioch, Tennessee, sat down that morning, he didn't expect to defend his music. He was about to defend his personal story of redemption. The tension in the room grew heavy. The audience stopped breathing, and host Joy Behar was about to realize that some life stories aren't marketing campaigns. They're written in the scars people carry. But before we go further, think about this for a moment. Can someone truly leave their past behind? Do some people believe that once you mess up, you should never be allowed to move on? Let's step inside the studio and see what really happened. That Tuesday morning, the set of The View felt different. The energy in the studio wasn't the relaxed buzz of daytime television. Something else filled the air. People were excited and waiting. Word had spread quickly through the audience. Jelly Roll was the guest. The crowd looked different too. There were women in their 40s and 50s wearing shirts with his song lyrics printed across them. A few rows back sat men who looked like they had driven through the night to be there. Some had tattoos. Others carried something the kind of life experience that leaves quiet marks in a person's eyes. Many of them had connected with Jelly Roll's music. Songs about addiction, pain, finding a way out, and hope. Songs that made people feel understood. Then the moment arrived. When Jelly Roll walked onto the stage, the applause exploded through the studio. It wasn't just polite applause. It was louder, warmer, more personal. It sounded like gratitude. These weren't fans clapping for a celebrity. They were people thanking someone who had spoken about struggles they knew too well. Jelly Roll paused for a moment, looked out at the audience, nodding slightly at faces he would probably never meet but somehow understood. Then he made his way to the guest chair. At 6 feet tall and over 300 pounds, his presence filled the stage. Tattoos stretched across his neck, covered his hands, creeping toward his face, each one telling a story from a complicated life. He lowered himself into the chair, briefly gripped the armrests before settling in. The hosts greeted him warmly. Whoopi Goldberg welcomed him with a smile. Sarah Haynes looked genuinely excited to have him. The audience still hummed with energy, eager to hear from the man whose honest lyrics had turned into anthems for people trying to rebuild their lives. For a moment, everything felt comfortable. Then the atmosphere shifted. Before the applause had even fully faded, Joy Behar leaned forward. Suddenly, the tone of the conversation changed. "So, Jelly Roll," she began. "Or should I say Jason?" Her voice carried a sharp edge. "Let me just get straight to it. You have this story of redemption that everyone seems to love, the drug dealer who finds faith in country music." She paused for a moment. "But I have to ask, how much of that story is actually real?" The studio went silent. "Because," she continued, "it almost sounds too perfect. The troubled past, the prison time, the drugs, and then the transformation through music and religion." She leaned closer. "Isn't it possible that this whole story is a very clever marketing angle?" The room froze. Whoopi's smile tightened. Sarah Haynes glanced down at her notes as if hoping to disappear into them. And Jelly Roll, he stared directly at Joy Behar. It was the kind of look that suggested she might have seriously misjudged the man sitting in front of her. "I'm sorry," Jelly Roll said slowly, his voice carrying a strong Tennessee drawl. "Did you just ask me if my life is a marketing strategy?" Joy didn't away. "I'm asking if the story being presented is the truth," she replied, "because it feels very convenient, doesn't it? A troubled past, prison, addiction, and then redemption through music and faith." She shrugged slightly. "It almost sounds like the narrative for reaching a certain audience." The accusation hung in the air. Around the studio, people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Many of them had come specifically to see Jelly Roll. Now they were watching someone question the authenticity of the story that meant much to them. Jelly Roll took a breath. "Let me make sure I understand what you're asking," he said calmly. "You're asking if I made up being a drug dealer." He paused. "If I made up going to prison." Another pause. "If I made up being addicted to heroin and cocaine." His voice hardened. "If I made up watching friends die from overdoses." The room was completely silent. Joy responded carefully. "I'm saying the way the story is presented feels strategic. I wonder how much of the man we see on stage, the one crying during songs, talking about his daughter praising Jesus, is genuine. How much of it," she added, "is simply performance." For a second, Jelly Roll didn't speak. When he finally did, his voice was quieter, far more intense. "You want to know what's genuine, Joy?" He leaned forward. I'll tell you what's real. I spent my birthday in juvenile detention. That's real. I watched my friend overdose on pills that I sold him. His jaw tightened. That's real. I missed the 5 years of my daughter's life because I was either locked up, or too high to be a father. His tattooed hands gripped the arms of the chair. Every word carried the weight of years most people in that room could hardly imagine. Suddenly, the conversation was no longer about marketing or storytelling. It was about pain, about regret, about whether a man who survived his past is ever truly allowed to leave it behind. I have felonies on my record. They will be with me for the rest of my life. I am not allowed to vote. I am not allowed to own a gun. There are some countries that I am not allowed to enter because of the choices I made when I was young and reckless and desperate. Jelly Roll stopped talking for a moment, letting his words sink in. The studio was silent. You think that is something I would use to sell myself? He asked quietly. You think someone would choose to talk about this if they had another option? For a moment, Joy Behar looked surprised by how Jelly Roll felt. She leaned forward again, not backing down. That is my point, she said. You have taken those experiences, used them to create a certain image. The singer who has been through times, the voice of people who are struggling. It is an image and it makes you a lot of money. Touring venues is expensive. The audience started to murmur. Jelly Roll nodded slowly. No, it is not cheap, he said. Then he leaned forward a little. But you know what I do with that money? He asked. The room got quieter. I use it to help people who are addicted and cannot afford treatment. I visit prisons, talk to young men who are making the same mistakes I made. I help families who have lost loved ones to overdoses. He looked straight at Joy. Is that part of my image too, Joy? Is that something I do to look good? Joy waved her hand a little. I am sure those things are good, she said. But they also get you press, do they not? Every time you visit a prison or talk about your past, it makes your story stronger. It is hard to tell what is real and what is just for show. The words hung in the air. For a moment, Jelly Roll looked down, thinking about what to say. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. It meant more. Let me tell you about the prison I visited, he said. It was in Kentucky. It was a security prison. The audience leaned in, wanting to hear more. I sat in a room with 50 men. Men who will never get out of prison. People that society has given up on. He stopped, remembering the moment. I told them my story, the times I almost died, the nights I wished I was dead, the moment I decided I had to change my life. He stopped again. Then his voice started to shake a little. After I finished talking, one of the men came up to me. He was 60 years old. He had been in prison for 30 years. Jelly Roll looked down for a moment before continuing. He grabbed my hand. He started crying. The studio was completely silent. He told me he had lost hope a time ago. Hearing my story, hearing that someone could come back from that darkness, made him think that maybe he could still become a better person. Jelly Roll slowly shook his head. You think I did that for publicity, Joy? You think I went into that room and told those men the parts of my life just to get my name in the news? He looked up, his face firm. I did it because I used to be on the path. Maybe not far gone, but I was headed in the same direction. His voice got harder. If someone had not helped me when I needed it, I would be dead or in prison, just like them. Then something unexpected happened. Jelly Roll stood up. He is a man, over 6 feet tall and over 300 pounds, covered in tattoos. When he spoke, his voice was steady and calm, which made his words more powerful. You want to talk about being calculated? He asked. I will show you what calculated is. He pointed to the host table. Calculated is coming up with questions ahead of time that are meant to get a reaction. The audience started to stir. Calculated is bringing up someone's past, not because you care, because it gets people to watch. Joy's face got tighter. Calculated is questioning someone's faith just to sound smart on television. His words hit their mark. I am just doing my job as a journalist, Joy said. I have to ask questions. Jelly Roll let out a laugh, but it was not funny. Questions? He repeated. Real tough questions would be asking why many people are dying from overdoses in our country. He took a step forward. Real tough questions would be asking how we can help people who are addicted get the help they need of putting them in prison. The audience started to nod, agreeing with him. Real tough questions would be asking why we give up on people of giving them a chance to change. He pointed at Joy. What you are doing is not asking questions. His voice got sharper. You are trying to tear down someone who is actually doing something to help. The room was filled with tension. You want to know why people like my music? Jelly Roll asked. Because I tell the truth. The truth about addiction, about shame, about pain. He stopped for a moment. About the small amount of hope that if you fight hard enough, you can become a better person than you used to be. Whoopi Goldberg tried to interrupt. I think maybe we should. Jelly Roll gently raised his hand. No, he said respectfully. I appreciate what you are trying to do, Whoopi. I need to finish this. He looked out at the audience. Because this is not about me. His voice got softer. This is every person who is trying to rebuild their life and being told by people like Joy that it is impossible. That it is fake. That changing your life is a way to sell yourself. Then he turned back to Joy. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, more personal. I have a daughter, Joy. Her name is Bailey Ann. His face softened in a way that the audience had not seen before. She is the reason I got clean. The reason I am still alive. The room was silent for a time. When she was little, she used to come visit me in jail. He looked down for a moment. Do you know what that does to a man? His voice got heavy with emotion. To see your little girl standing on the side of that glass, knowing you put yourself there, knowing you are failing her every single day. Jelly Roll's voice shook for a moment. He kept going. I made a promise to my daughter, Jelly Roll said in a voice. He promised her that he would become someone she could be proud of. He stopped for a second, letting his words sink in. This promise was not made to a record label or to his fans. Jelly Roll made this promise to his daughter, looking her in the eyes and swearing that her dad was going to change. His voice became steadier. Jelly Roll has been trying to keep this promise every day since then. For a moment, he looked out at the people watching him. Then his voice became stronger. Jelly Roll's wife, Bunny, knows everything about him. He shook his head a little. She knows all the things he has done, all the people he has hurt, and all the lies he has told. The room was silent. Bunny knows about the drugs, the women, and the violence. Jelly Roll paused. She chose to love him anyway. His tone became softer. This is not because she is naive or does not understand the truth. It is because she believes people can change. Jelly Roll nodded slowly. Bunny has seen him change. His voice filled with emotion. Bunny was there on the nights when everything in him wanted to fall into his old life. When the temptation to use again was screaming in his head, she stayed with him. She held him while he cried. The people watching him were still now. Jelly Roll said that this woman stood by him through things that would have made most people walk away. She believed in him when he did not even believe in himself. Then he looked at Joy. And you want to tell me that my transformation is marketing, Jelly Roll said. You want to say that the life we built together, the family we created, and the love that pulled me out of darkness are just part of some branding strategy. Tears had formed in his eyes. He did not wipe them away. You want to call it marketing, he said quietly. Call it whatever you want. Jelly Roll put his hand on his chest. I know the truth. My daughter knows the truth. And the thousands of people who come up to me after shows crying and telling me that my music gave them the courage to ask for help, they know the truth too. Joy shifted in her chair, clearly uncomfortable with the emotion filling the room. I did not mean to suggest that your relationship with your daughter is not genuine, she said cautiously. Yes, you did, Jelly Roll interrupted. His tone was not loud. It was firm. That is what you suggested. You said everything about me is calculated, that nothing is real, and that even my love for my child is part of some strategy. Jelly Roll leaned forward slightly. I am here to tell you that you are wrong. A moment passed. Wrong, Jelly Roll said. He slowly sat back down. The weight of his presence still filled the room. You know what I find interesting about people like you, Joy, he continued. You have never had to fight for something. The words landed hard. You have never had to claw your way out of a hole you dug yourself. His gaze never left her. You have never had to look in the mirror, hate what you see, and still find the strength to change it. A murmur moved through the people watching. So when someone says they changed, Jelly Roll continued, you do not believe it. He shrugged faintly. Because you cannot imagine having to do it yourself. Joy opened her mouth as if to respond. No words came out. Then Jelly Roll said something that made the room freeze. Let me tell you something about my past that I do not usually talk about, he said. His voice lowered. When I was at my lowest, when I was using every day and selling drugs just to feed the addiction, I had a gun in my mouth. I was ready to end everything. The room fell into silence. The only thing that stopped me, Jelly Roll said slowly, was the thought of my daughter growing up without a father, even if that father was in one. Even the cameras seemed to pause. That is not marketing, Joy, he continued softly. That is rock bottom. That is the moment when you realize you either change or you die. Jelly Roll looked up. I chose to change. His voice grew stronger. It was not easy. It was not quick. It took years of falling down, getting back up, failing again, and fighting through it. I did it. Jelly Roll gestured lightly around the room. Now I use my music to tell people that if I could come back from that place, they can too. Passion filled his voice now. Every prison I visit, every addict I talk to, every kid who is starting down the path, I tell them the same thing. You are not your mistake. You are not the person you were yesterday. You still have the power to become someone. Jelly Roll pointed gently toward the floor for emphasis. That message is not calculated, Joy. That message is the reason I am still alive today. He slowly turned his attention to the people watching. Many people were openly wiping tears from their faces. I see people there who know exactly what I am talking about, Jelly Roll said. People who have fought the battles, who have lost loved ones to the same demons. His voice softened again. They did not come here today to watch someone tear me down. They came here because they believe in chances, because they need to believe that change is possible. A long pause filled the room. Then he asked quietly, "What do you believe in, Joy, besides controversy and ratings?" The question hung heavily in the air. What have you ever fought for? He continued. What have you ever overcome? What message do you send to the world other than skepticism and cynicism? Joy seemed smaller now in her chair. I believe in asking questions, she said, though her voice lacked the confidence it once had. Jelly Roll shook his head slowly. No, you do not. His tone was calm but cutting. You believe in questions that make you look edgy. You believe in attacking people who cannot push back people who are expected to smile and take it because that is what celebrities are supposed to do. But I'm not a celebrity, Joy, Jelly Roll said quietly. I'm a survivor, and survivors fight back. For a moment, the tension in the studio was really thick. Then Sarah Haynes finally spoke up, trying to make things better. Jelly Roll, I think what Joy was trying to say. I know what she was trying to say, he replied, his voice getting a bit softer. He acknowledged her. He took a moment to think before speaking. She's saying my story sounds too good to be true, that people don't really change much. That underneath all the talk about redemption, I'm still the guy who used to sell drugs and hurt my community. The words hung in the air for a bit. Then Jelly Roll nodded slowly. And you know what? He continued. Part of me agrees with her. The audience looked surprised. Part of me still feels like that guy sometimes, he admitted. Part of me still carries the weight of everything I ever did. His voice got more thoughtful. I've lost friends because of the drugs I sold. I've hurt people and broken relationships for a time, more than 20 years. He shook his head. That kind of damage doesn't just go away because I wrote some songs about it. Even Joy looked taken aback by how honest he was being. But here's the difference, Joy, Jelly Roll continued. Redemption isn't about pretending the past never happened. He leaned forward a bit. It's about building something, even though it was tough. It's about taking all the pain and guilt and shame and turning it into something that might actually help someone. His voice got firmer. That's what I try to do every day. He put his hand on his chest, not because it makes me feel better about myself, but because it's the way I know to make any of this make sense. Then he turned to the audience, his voice getting deeper, like a preacher speaking from the heart. I've sat with mothers who lost their kids to the drugs I used to sell, he said. I've looked them in the eyes, told them the truth about what I did. He paused. I've asked them to forgive me, even though I don't deserve it. The studio was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. And you know what most of them say? He continued. They say, thank you. He looked out at the crowd. Thank you for being honest. Thank you for trying to stop it from happening to someone. Thank you for not pretending you're better than you are. Some people in the audience were crying. That's what redemption looks like, Joy, he said softly. It's not easy. It's not comfortable. It definitely isn't a marketing strategy. He shook his head. It's waking up every day, asking for the strength to be better than you were yesterday. It's facing the people you hurt and taking responsibility. And it's using the parts of your story to maybe, just maybe, stop someone else from making the same mistakes. Then Jelly Roll stood up again. This time it was clear he was getting ready to leave. Before he did, he turned to the cameras. I want to say something to everyone watching now, he said. His voice carried across the studio. To anyone out there struggling, anyone caught in addiction, anyone sitting in a jail cell now feeling like their life is over. Emotion filled his voice. To anyone who believes they've made mistakes they can never come from, he paused. You can change. The words echoed through the room. I know it doesn't feel like it now, he continued. I know the voices in your head are telling you that you're worthless, that you'll never be different, that you should just give up. He shook his head slowly. Those voices are lying. His voice got stronger. I'm standing here as proof that they're lying. He took a breath. It will be the fight of your life, You'll fail times, then you succeed. If you keep fighting, if you refuse to give up, his voice broke a bit, you can become someone you never thought you could be. Then he looked back at Joy one time. That's the message I carry every day of my life, he said. That's why I tell my story. Not for marketing, not for money. He paused, and because somewhere out there is someone who needs to hear it. Someone sitting in the darkness, just like he once was. Someone who might be holding a gun now, he said quietly, trying to decide whether life is still worth living. The studio was motionless. If my music, my story, my willingness to be honest about where I came from. He put his hand over his heart. If that can convince one person to put that gun down. He looked around the room one last time. Then everything I went through was worth it. Jelly Roll wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, which had lots of tattoos on it. He took a breath before speaking again. You asked if I'm real, he said quietly, so here's my answer. His voice could be heard clearly in the studio. I've been more honest with the world about my mistakes than most people are with their families. He stopped talking for a moment. I've talked openly about my struggles with addiction, about doing things, about the people I hurt, and about the shame I still feel every day. He looked around the room, and I did it knowing that some people would never forgive me, knowing there would always be doors closed to me, knowing my past would follow me for the rest of my life. His voice got softer, a whisper, yet it filled every corner of the studio. That's not trying to sell something, Joy. There was a moment of silence. That's telling the truth. Another pause. That's making up for what I did wrong. He put a hand on his chest. That's a man trying to do good by helping others avoid the mistakes he made. He looked directly at her. And how if you can't see the difference between that and a marketing plan. He shook his head slowly. Then I feel sorry for you. His voice remained calm. Had a lot of weight to it, because it means you've never known what it's like to be broken, and then work to fix yourself. With that, he began walking toward the edge of the set. Just before leaving, he stopped. My mom used to say something, he added, glancing back. People who are hurt others. He sighed softly. That's why I try not to take what you said personally. A quiet silence followed. I don't know what made you who you are today, he continued. I don't know what kind of pain you might be carrying. What makes someone feel the need to tear others down? Then he delivered one thought. But I do know this. When someone attacks another person's chance to make things right, it says more about them than it does about the person they're questioning. He turned away from the table, looked out at the audience one last time. Thank you all for being, he said warmly. Thank you for believing in chances. His voice softened with gratitude. Thank you for giving people like me a reason to keep fighting. He put a hand over his heart. I love you all. With that, Jelly Roll walked off the set of The View. The atmosphere he left behind was completely different. Women in the audience were openly crying. Some men quietly wiped their eyes, pretending they weren't. The other hosts sat frozen in their seats, moved by what had just happened. And Joy Behar, she remained seated at the table, looking smaller than when the interview began. Whether it was embarrassment, reflection, or something deeper, only she could know. The silence in the room spoke louder than any applause. There were no cheers for questioning, no validation for skepticism. Only the weight of a man who had been honest. Challenged everyone watching to think about what making things right truly means. What began as an interview had turned into something powerful. A reminder of the strength found in honesty. A challenge to cynicism, proof that behind every story of making things right, there's a human being who fought battles most people will never understand. Now the question is yours. What do you think about this confrontation? Was Joy Behar out of line? Was she simply doing her job? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories.